Let's begin.
Hey there, scary story fanatics. Welcome back to Cleaving Thought from Bone with your host, Sociopathic. Tonight I bring you something from the depths of the resulting ponderances of my mind. A scary place to be for sure. So sit back, relax, and get ready for a story that you might not have expected, but you'll love all the same. A little tale that I like to call of Opus and Epoch.
Russell opened his eyes. Somehow he expected fatigue, for reasons he did not understand, but he felt none. Instant peace and tranquility resided over him, at least at first, as if his state of mind was being suspended in a weightlessness of space. But from where he sat, he could see the roil of a grand ocean and feel the warmth of the breeze. The scent of seawater and sand underscored that which his perception already told him. He was on a beach. But how did he get here? Russell had no recollection of it, no idea of how or why he was here, or even where here was. Russell stood to his feet, brushing off the sand from his business casual attire, and scanned his surroundings for visual clues and cues. There was a forest behind him, and a great sprawling beach that surrounded it and wrapped around it on both sides, as if he were on an island. The ocean surrounding it seemed to roil with both a calmness and energy that made it seem as though, even though the waters churned, that somehow this was its natural placid state, highlighted by the weak force of the very mild breeze that blew by. But most of all, Russell took in the sky that seemed to envelop all. Bright and blue, sparse and occasional clouds, and yet no bright sun to be found. Instead, amongst the roof of the heavens were the pinprick points of stars, other celestial bodies such as supernovae, nebulae, and even a grand galaxy that appeared as a band of both, all covered in that sky blue haze, as if both day and night had somehow combined above in the atmosphere. And the water, or rather the waves, on that rolling ocean seemed to reflect the finer and most beautiful details of the heavens above, each expression of the ocean a beautiful cosmic work of art in itself. This had to be a dream. At least that's what Russell tried to reason. But he remained. He did not wake up from any slumber, and soon, dream or not, he began to ponder whether or not he was truly alone. Russell turned away from the ocean waves and spied something odd that he had not seen before, nestled close to the tree line by the sandy beach, small, easily overlooked, but begging curiosity and assumptions all the same. It looked like a small wooden structure of sorts, made not crudely but masterfully, of the landscape that surrounded it, mostly from the wood of the same long-since-forgotten trees that shared in the species with those that surrounded it. Someone had to have built this place, and now Russell was more curious than ever. "Hello?" Russell called out, listening to the sound of the breeze through the leaves above and nothing more. Russell was about to call out again, but as he approached the structure for a closer look, he heard the sound of something running through the sand behind him. Russell spun around, flabbergasted by both the relief that company brings and shock at the form it took. The man that stood facing him, too close to have properly snuck up on him, as he stood about 5 feet away in nearly the same tracks in the sand that Russell had made. His body was of moderate height. The suit he wore looked far too formal for the dreamlike tropical surroundings, and Russell would have bet his dark hair would be combed to perfection had it not been covered by a hat that contrasted the man's entire outfit. Atop his scalp rested a goofy red jester hat, trimmed with gold, with 4 dangling brim-like tassels that hung downward like tentacles, each ending with a gold bell. The man's appearance looked as out of place as Russell felt simply by being here. "You rang?" the man asked Russell, bowing forward with a greeting. Russell was so taken aback by the man's sudden and drastic appearance, his previous torrent of inquiries had been replaced by all new ones, leaving him searching for words. "Ah, still grappling, I see. That's good stuff right there. You want a drink?" the man asked, and Russell looked at him with a dumbfounded expression. The man pointed a finger over Russell's shoulder, causing him to turn and see that the man was pointing at the small wooden structure. Russell began, but before a formulated sentence could spill from his mouth, he felt a pat on his shoulder as the man walked by. "Come on," the man said, leading the way. Russell followed the man towards the small wooden structure. It was a small building and only 1 story. The majority of its walls were open, the timber made of sticks and logs tied with vine, and the roof made of grass, reeds, and large palm-like leaves, albeit appearing as if put together by a masterful craftsman's precision. The man with the jester hat had walked through a small opening in the knee-high exterior wall and towards a large shelf covered in glass bottles. The man had taken the bottle, poured some of its contents into a glass, and handed the glass to Russell. But before he did, Russell had understood what this shack truly was. It was a tiki bar. Russell stared blankly for a minute, and then took the drink from the man's hand, not only without a word, but seemingly without a thought. Where am I? What is this place? Russell finally spoke up. "Aha, he speaks. This is your place," the man replied with a smile, taking a sip from a drink that he poured for himself. Russell didn't understand his answer and thought maybe a different approach may help shed some light. "Who are you?" Russell followed up. "Me? Well, you can call me..." The man paused for a moment. "Epoch." What an odd name, Russell thought. And maybe he's not from around here. But he considered that neither was he, and as such had no idea where here even was. "Okay, So, you say this is my place, huh? How on earth did I get here?" Russell responded. Okay. I know you're really confused, and I get that, but I don't really just stand around answering questions. Tell you what, it seems what you need is information, and since I could use a few things, maybe we could work something out. You want to know how you got here? I'll tell you, but first, you have to do something for me. I guess that's reasonable, Russell replied, hoping that whatever the man wanted from him wouldn't be something unreasonable. "See that forest behind me? Over that way?" Et began, pointing down the beach to his right. "There's a path that leads up and into that forest. Walk a few miles in, continue on past the brush and rocks that sit high, and to a place where the palms stretch wide in a patch on both sides. If you've hit the waterfall, you've gone too far." "Wait, a few miles?" Russell began with surprise and confusion. The island appeared so small, at least from the bit he was able to see. The forest was thick, but he doubted it could be miles deep. I know. Small island, large forest. How's that working? Well, let's just simply imagine the forest enveloping the base of a tall, spire-like mountain. 5 miles up, 5 miles back down. Et replied with a grin, as if he could simply read Russell's thoughts. Russell immediately considered that maybe Et had had this conversation before, anticipating his confusion and subsequent inquiries. But as Russell turned to face the forest beyond the tiki bar, he indeed saw a tall, spire-like mountain hillside that seemed to stretch above the trees at its base, pulling up the inner forest with it. And sure, he was confused and scanning everything wildly, but this feature somehow eluded him when he first gazed upon the backdrop of that beach, as if he had missed it entirely, or maybe it hadn't been there. But Russell knew mountains did not simply spring out of the earth, appearing and disappearing at will, so he believed the reason he glanced over this feature must have been the former. "So, you want me to find some trees?" he asked his bartender, and Et shook his head side to side with a chuckle from under his breath. No, Russell. That is your name, isn't it? No, what I need is the fruit that grows at the tops of those trees. As you can imagine, cocktails are hard to come by in this place, he finished, swallowing the last of his drink. "So, if I go get this fruit, you'll tell me how I got here?" Russell asked, and Et shook his head up and down as he gulped the last of his drink from his mouth. Russell looked back at the forest, then back at his drink. He slugged the last of the stiff liquor from the glass, wiped his mouth, and stood to face back towards the forest. The request seemed easy enough. The forest was deep into dark. The flora had given way to large, towering, stone-like rocks that seemed to hug the trail that cut between them. Tall trees of all kinds stretched high above them, shadowing the timberland in a twilight that, although beautiful, seemed a bit too dark than what the scattered light above would allow, lending a magical glint to most of the things found within. The rocks, the tall trees, even the path itself seemed to glisten as if imbued with diamond dust, reflecting light sporadically as Russell walked, lending an appearance of enchantment. Soon, the steep earth continued on past the tall rocks and gave way to a small grove of tall palm trees on both sides of the path that he walked. Russell could hear the sound of rushing water in the distance ahead and knew that he must have found the spot. Russell approached the most climbable of these trees that he could find. The top was high off the ground, but not so high that he could not make out the finer details of those lofty branches, and as he searched them more and more, he came to the conclusion that each of the trees were bare of any fruit. "Trust me, they're up there," Russell heard from behind him, causing him to jump and spin around in a startle, seeing Et standing there with a smile. "But I don't... How did you..." Russell began, blurting out portions of questions without semblance. "I know. You can't see them from here. Trust me," Ed explained with a grin Russell was beginning to get uncomfortable with. He wanted to disobey, to demand answers, but somehow he knew he wouldn't get any. With a sigh, Russell removed his button-up shirt and began climbing the tall palm that he had originally approached. The climb was much easier than he expected, and although he was petrified of heights, somehow he held no fear within him. However, the closer he got to the top, the more details of those leaves and branches revealed themselves. But he still saw no fruit. "There's nothing up here," Russell turned and yelled down to Et, but Et just smiled back and pointed back up towards Russell, looking at something beyond him. Russell turned his gaze back towards the tree, and there they were, revealed by the breeze as it blew a large leaf aside. He couldn't believe it, and he knew that they had been previously covered by a large green paddle, but he still felt like he should have somehow spotted them earlier. But regardless, he had acquired that which he came for, and after tossing them down to the ground for collection, He climbed back down the tree. Okay, so I got your fruit. How did I get here? Russell asked. Et smiled as he picked up the 3 coconuts. Why, from my point of view, you simply appeared here. But that makes sense, since you never really left in the first place. Russell was in no mood for riddles. I want a straight answer, and you promised that you'd tell me. First off, Et began, I promised you nothing. Sure, I told you that I'd give you more information, and I did that. It's not my fault you don't like what I have to say. But what is to be said can be delivered no differently. This isn't making any sense. Why can't you just give me a straight answer? Russell asked, and Et smiled. I'll tell you what, I'm getting pretty thirsty, and not for the good stuff, Et jested. Walk with me to the waterfall up the way, fetch me a drink, and I'll show you exactly how you got here. Russell was in no mood for any more games, but fetching some water from a pool seemed easy enough, and if Et was going to show him, then maybe he resigned himself to honesty being without the trickery of words. Russell agreed, and Et led the way further up the trail. Tired, frustrated, and desiring answers, not even that could take Russell's attention off the beauty of the majesty that he now beheld. The water appeared to be the cleanest and the freshest water that he had ever seen, crashing from high into a deep pool that smelled as pure as it appeared, seemingly sparkling with the same glint that all else retained. So, what do you want me to put it in? Russell asked, referring to the water. Well, use your hands, of course, Et responded plainly. You want me to cup the water in my hand and give me a drink? Et finished his question with the answer to it. This is ridiculous, Russell proclaimed. But Et just smiled, silently waiting for that which he knew Russell had no choice but to do. Russell sighed, approached the water, and proceeded to cup a small amount into his hands that he placed together. Standing up, he rushed to Et and slipped as much of it into his now open orifice that he could without spilling too much of the water. Ah, that's better. Thanks for the thirst quencher, Et responded with a grateful tone. And? You said you'd show me. How did I get here, while always never leaving here? Russell asked with a demand. Et simply pointed to the waterfall, and the pool to which it dumped into. Well, how does the water fill this pool? Did it arrive here? Or was it always here? The pool, the falling water, and the river above, it's all the same water, correct? The only thing that changes is the contour of the land, the frame of reference. But the water is, the water does, and the water will be, Et explained with crypticism. That doesn't explain anything, Russell responded with a clear frustration. So, I'm water? No, you're like water, but not the water itself, Et elaborated with no real resolution. You're not making any sense. Who the hell are you? Russell asked. I told you. Et Ogi, Et reiterated. No, Russell countered. Not your name. Who are you? Really? What is your purpose here? Russell clarified, and Et smiled the biggest grin that he had donned to his expression yet. Ah, now that's a question. One I'll happily reveal. If... Et paused. If what? What do you need now? Russell asked, knowing that Et would require yet another task to be done. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm getting hungry. I'm afraid not much else resides here on the island, but the waters around it are well supplied with fat, lazy fish. So lazy, in fact, you can catch them with your bare hands. Et insinuated his desires. So, if I catch you a fish, you'll tell me what I want to know? Russell questioned, conveying he would like to not chase this carrot on a stick anymore. A deal's a deal. Yes, walk with me back to the beach. and I'll show you where they like to hang out in the shallows." Russell really didn't feel like pursuing useless goals anymore, but he was hungry as well, and such a venture was sure to benefit him just as much as it would Et. So, he agreed, and the pair slowly made their way back down the path towards the beach. Russell found himself at the end of a wooden dock, not far from where the tiki bar sat upon the beach. Et tried to convince him that the waters here were shallow, and though clarity allowed him to see the bottom, the waves still rose tall, the water swelling and contracting, making the reach difficult for Russell. However, he could see many types of fish of variety, species, and color, all large enough for a meal, and swimming casually by. "Go on, just a little further," Et coaxed Russell, who bent down so low as to reach into the ocean, and, surprisingly, he grabbed a fish, a large one, on his first try. With triumphance, Russell spun around with glee, proud that he had accomplished the task. Et smiled. "Good job, and now I know you want to know who I am, what I'm doing here, yes?" Russell nodded. Et took a step closer, smiled, and shoved Russell as hard as he could, sending him flying off the dock into the surge of rising and cresting waves. "What the hell?" Russell choked upon reaching the surface. "Take a good look at my face, Russell. A real close look. Don't you recognize me?" Et asked. Russell knew how to swim, but for some reason struggled to stay above the waters. But he did look, staring at Et, and was confused how he had missed it before. Et's jawline, his brown eyes, his distinct nose. Russell did recognize Et. He had seen him every time that he had looked in the mirror. You're me?" Russell choked on the water swirling around him. "Well, kind of. You see, I'm the way you see yourself. You, Russell, created me. You created this place. Even you were created by you." Et laughed. "But why?" Russell began, beginning to be pulled under. "Because it's time to go back. But don't worry, no matter who you are, where you go, I'll always be with you. You will create me again and again. That's your job, and in return, I'll keep you chasing, because that's my job. Don't you get it? I can't ever be satisfied." Russell didn't understand at first, but as he choked in a gulp of that sparkling water that reflected the cosmos, he began to understand. But in that comprehension, he knew he had failed, because it was too late. He had trapped himself again. Russell sank beneath the water and out of sight of the island, of the trees and the fish, and out of sight of Et himself. And Et smiled a toothy grin, revealing razor-sharp teeth much akin to a shark's, eyes gleaming sinisterly, laughing heartily at the job well done that he had performed, and pondered, the rock so heavy that God himself could not lift it. He chuckled a little bit to himself, watching the waves crest to the island once more, knowing full well that one day soon Russell, or one like him, would return, seeking the answers itself designed to hide.
Struggling to ascertain the realms and realities of your own existence? Well, aren't we all? But don't struggle too hard. Just come back here again next weekend for more of that gore galore you crave. And until then, make sure to like, share, subscribe, and turn on notifications so I can catch you all again next Saturday.
Social media can be very unpredictable, especially regarding horror content. If this content gets removed, all new content will be simultaneously presented on various websites provided in the description to this video. Make sure to follow me in other digital spaces so that you never miss out on the terror. Also, if you like this video, make sure to leave a comment and hit the like button. It helps the channel a lot. If you're new to the channel and you enjoy what's here, consider hitting that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you never miss an upload. Writing is a dream of mine, and it's all of you that make that dream come true.